Listeners, this is F. Molina, and today we got with us Judge Carlos Villalon. And he is, if you don't know, he is the Child Protective Court Judge for Hidalgo County, right? Is that correct?
Close enough. It's Child Protection Court. That's what they call it here in this county, but we've got a really long name. It's got Child Protection Court of the Rio Grande Valley West.
Yeah,
now I'll explain a little bit of that here in a minute. But yeah, Child Protection Court is good.
Did you ever see yourself as a child protection judge?
I kind of wanted to do this back in the day when I first started. Not something that I really set my goals on, no.
My opinion that your court is probably the most important court in the entire courthouse, because you're dealing with children that really haven't done anything wrong, but they're thrown into the court system. Can you explain to people, what does the Child Protective Court do?
We're an associate court. I think that's the first thing I need to point out is we hear the cases for our county and district courts. And so the cases are initially assigned to them, but every case that we receive is as a result of somebody phoning in some sort of concern with regard to abuse or neglect, right? And so they go through the CPS system, they go through the investigation, and these are kiddos that unfortunately, not every case is like that, but we have some cases where we work with a family and the kids stay at home, right? Which is ideal. We won't want to remove the kids, but unfortunately there are situations where the immediate dangers are there and they do have to come into care. And so I'll end up signing on some emergency orders to get them out of the house. And then we work with the family, with the hope that you can reunify and get them back home to their mother and father, whichever relative was taking care of them at that point in time. But the cases are, they're difficult, right? I mean, they're coming in because there were circumstances in the home that were dangerous. And the hope is that we're not just separating families, but we're doing some meaningful intervention, because a lot of it really is substance use and mental health issues. That's the bulk of what we see.
And what type of situations do you typically see where children are placed into your court?
The typical situation is going to be one where there's a combination of things, right? It's not just one thing. When I run the data on these cases, we're only allowed to select one identifier as far as the reason for removal. But the fact of the matter is it's a combination of poverty, mental health, and substance use. We have a lot of domestic violence involved, and the majority of our cases are under those circumstances.
A child comes into protective court.
Right. You
kind of serve as the mom and dad for that child, right? They're under the custodialship of the court or department?
So they're not necessarily wards of the court. The department is giving temporary managing conservatorship. So the department now steps into the shoes of the parent, right? And it's my responsibility to make sure that their needs are being met and that the department is actually working with the parents to try and reunify or whatever goal it is that they have in mind, that they're working that goal. But ultimately, they kind of fall under my watch, right? And it's the court's responsibility to make sure that they're okay.
Now, when you say that sounds like you're shoveling snow like uphill. It sounds like such a difficult job to do, to have these kids that have probably gone through something that's really mentally tough and then be placed before your court and then trying to put them in a place and have their needs met. How do you even begin to approach your day when you wake up and gonna rule on some of these cases?
Every day is different. There is no day where it's just a routine day and we just run through the course of the day and there are no hiccups. These cases are all difficult. When these kids come into care, you have to assume that they've experienced trauma, whether it's before or the circumstances that involve the removal or the removal itself, being pulled out of your house by strangers and taken to a home full of other strangers, sometimes hours away because they don't have placements here. That does a lot of damage to these kids too. And so You really have to look at it from a holistic view here, that child has experienced trauma as a result of what's going on, what we're doing as well, and that you also have to kind of factor in that the parents also have their traumas that they've experienced. Is the reason that that's the reason they're in this position a lot of times, is because they have unresolved traumas themselves, and they try to cope by using drugs. They have mental health issues, and those things kind of carry through that process as well. So, everybody is a victim of trauma in the court, and you just want to treat them the best way that you can. And the court's a little different. I mean, you walk into our court right away. You walk through the doors and you see the murals in our courtroom, right?
Yeah.
You see the books there, and it's real child friendly. And then you walk in, and it's not as heavy, I would say, although there's a lot of tension in our cases, right? Because kids have been taken from their homes. Got a lot of family members involved, but we try to loosen things up, to keep things light, right, as much as we can, and just kind of create this atmosphere of healing, so to say, that we're there to help these families and not really, I don't want to say destroy them, but we're not there to separate and to keep them separated. We want everybody to go home and hopefully put it back the way it was, but in a safer way, right?
And I know when I go to the courthouse, the courthouse can be a very depressing place because people go there because they have problems. But the things that I've seen that kind of put a smile on my face, even though I'm never involved whatsoever, it's near your court, because you have certain adoption days or certain kids get adopted, and I think it gets finalized in your court. How does that work?
About 30% of our children will go home with their parent, wherever they were removed from. Another 30% will stay with family or extended family, like grandparents, so to say. And about 10% will go with a non-custodial parent. And then you have these others that are left over that usually end up in termination, right? Or maybe there's a dismissal along the way. There's no need to continue with the case. But those kiddos that get their rights, their parental rights terminated, the parents are terminated, they become eligible for adoption. And they tend to stay in the system for a bit. Probably on average, they will stay in the system for anywhere from a year to 2 years before they're able to be adopted. And so we are able to preside over the adoptions. That's really, in some places, the district courts handle those. Here, some of the courts will handle them as well, and sometimes they will refer them to me to give them closure, right, because they've been with us since the beginning. And a lot of the families want me to do the adoption as well. But we do that. I mean, adoption day, every day is adoption day for us. If we can get an adoption taken care of and get a child out of the system that's permanently in the system, we'll take it, right? But usually National Adoption Month and Adoption Day occurs in November. And we'll try and group a few that are ripe and ready for disposition, and have that on a special day, where we can get everybody in there and decorate things and just bring everybody together. But don't have to wait till November. We'll do it any time, and if we can give a child a forever home right away, we do that.
The one thing that I've seen, I mean, I'm a very cold, hard as a rock, no emotions whatsoever. But sometimes I get something in my eye when I'm near your court, and I see a foster parent who's maybe it's their first time fostering somebody, or maybe their second time, and they decide to adopt the kid. That must just be such a special moment for you.
Yeah, there's some truly amazing stories that have come through our court. I've seen a 17-year-old adopted by their former caseworker who had left the department. Wow. And then somehow became reconnected with a child years later, only to realize that he's almost 18. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have that forever home, but I can be that forever home. And so she stepped forward, and that was one of the first adoptions that I got to see on the bench, and I'll never forget it. I didn't preside over the adoption. Judge Aida Salinas, she presided over the adoption, but invited us over, and it was an interesting situation that you said that there's tears in the eye, because I'll never forget that it was also jail case day. And so there was a flood of orange in the courtroom on the right side in particular. And, of course, you associate that with toughness, and anger, and there wasn't a dry eye in the room. And those guys were crying. Everybody was crying in there. It was an amazing day, but that one stands out as because it was the first one. And just one of the amazing stories that we've seen in there. But every one of them is awesome. Yeah. And it's hard to hold back the tears. We got plenty of Kleenex that comes up.
How many years have you been the child protective judge?
This June will be 12 years.
And so what does your future hold? Where do you see the court going?
I don't see it going anywhere. As far as the court's existence goes, there's always going to be a need for this kind of specialty court. It's not a specialty court in the sense that it's been designated as such by the governor, but this specialization, and I don't even want to call it a specialization either, because that brings up all sorts of legal issues, right? But it really requires a lot of focus and attention and the kind of training that we've received to handle these cases. I mean, where else are you going to walk into a courtroom, one case, where there's CPS that's there with their lawyer, the mom's there with their lawyer, and it's dad number 1 and his lawyer, and dad number 2 and his lawyer, dad number 3 and his lawyer, maybe even dad number 4 and his lawyer, and then maybe 8 kids and their lawyer and their guardian. That's what a case looks like to us. And then you got everybody else around. You got family that may have come in. One case will pack the courtroom. And so there's always going to be a need for this kind of special focus on these families because it's, they all bring their different challenges. There's all sorts of different challenges involved. And there's no cookie cutter approach to any of this. It's kind of like a Rubik's Cube. There's probably, I don't know how many ways there are to solve it, right? But we do the best that we can, trying to piece things together, and we try to run it as a problem-solving session. So if you come in and you watch our cases, that's what it's about, is trying to look for solutions until we can't anymore. And if there's no solution, then we go to trial. But I don't see the court going anywhere anytime soon. The numbers are drastically different because of the way that legislation came down and kind of raising the bar to make it a little more difficult to remove kids from the home, which is understandable because what you want is you want to try and work with them in the home and not create that trauma of removing them, right? But the court is there, and it's strong. It's stronger than it's ever been. Did a lot of outreach. We work very closely with the university on programs. We have a coalition, the Coalition for Empowering Children and Family, that we put together as part of our ongoing efforts. We've been at this for a while now. We were a model court for a long time with the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges, NCJ, FCJ. That's a mouthful in itself. And so we participated in that program from starting in 2014, somewhere around there. And now we're a mentor court, a mentor site to help train other courts across the country. Oh, wow. So the other child protective courts around the country are looking at your court and trying to replicate what you're doing down here. That is awesome. Yeah. So we got into that program, and there had been a model courts program before with NCJ, FCJ, but we jumped on this train back in 2013. I want to say there were 8 courts at that point in time, and it's just expanded over the years of bringing in courts who want to be, you call them model courts, but it's not because they're models, right? They're laboratories for change, and that's what we wanted to do. Was we wanted to open our courtroom up and start looking at the best practices that are implemented across the country and start bringing those to here to the Valley. And so we've been doing that, and we're going to continue to do that. And yeah, we've taken on that larger role as a mentor site now. So folks will come down here and see how we do it. So if there's something new that say they want to implement, then they look to your court as one of those like staging grounds to say, let's try this new innovative idea. We've been a pilot site on a lot of stuff over the years. Wow, like what? We piloted a dual status pilot project. So we were working with Judge Betancourt for the 449th, and we're one of 3 courts here 3 child protection courts to pilot that program, right, where we're hearing cases where children who were in care or who are involved in the juvenile justice system cross over to the other system, vice versa, right? And so we handle those cases jointly, and that's one example.
Oh, wow.
What else did we pilot? Technology. We piloted technology that they've given us.
Let me ask you, because your court deals with such sensitive subjects on a daily basis and the stakes are so high, how do you deal with that stress level? How do you deal with what you see sometimes in your court that can break even the hardest of hearts? How do you deal with that?
Well, when I'm in the courtroom, I bite my tongue a lot. When you're in the courtroom, and this is something that we've actually gotten through our trauma training, you've got the stress balls, and, I'll play with a Rubik's Cube. That's kind of my fidget spinner, and I'll be messing around with that. And take a lot of breaks and try and take it in as much as you can. I mean, there are things that you will see and hear that you will never, ever forget. I think what becomes important is having an outlet outside of court and being able to relieve that stress there. Running is important to me, although I haven't been doing it very well lately. I need to get back on that and start running again. Music. I got 2 dogs that drive me crazy at home. One of them is a pandemic dog. The other one we recently got. And so that takes up a lot of my time, spending time with your family. It's not just stressful on me. It's stressful for anybody who works with these families. You get that secondary trauma. You feel it. You can take it home. Your family will feel it. And so you got to be very cognizant of that and try and control it the best way that you can in a healthy way, right?
Yeah.
And so those are some of the things that I do. I mean, I don't really have a lot of hobbies. I used to work a lot on cars back in the day, but that kind of changed.
Yeah, it kind of changed when they stopped making them with carburetors.
Well, actually, I was a fuel injection guy.
Oh,
so I can program fuel injection systems.
Oh, wow.
And I can.
Wow,
I used to do all the programming through HP tuners, and we were very much into drag racing and fuel injection. Fuel injection and turbos were my thing for many, many years.
What did you drive?
So first car I ever had was a Volkswagen Beetle, but we won't go there. That thing did 65, with the foot all the way down. But then I got a Buick Grand National, and we had quite a few of those in the family. So that was a 1987 Buick Grand National, and that was the first, I guess, General Motors turbocharged fuel injected car that came out, and we built those, we raced those, we restored those. And then when the LS1 came out with the Camaros and the Firebirds, we got heavily into that and learned a lot of HP tuners and programming there and drag racing and let that go. Sometime around 2015, 2016, that was just a hobby that, as you get older, priorities change, and, it's one of the things that I let go. Yeah.
So what did you drive in high school?
Volkswagen Beetle. Yeah. So I have to say that it was yellow. The fenders were wrecked, and my father helped me fix it up, and it ended up Porsche red, and we fixed it up. But it was no power brakes, no power steering, manual transmission, no air conditioner.
Well, yeah. A car you had to drive.
Yes. The good thing was that if the battery died on it, you could push start it.
Yeah, you could push. Yeah, just to throw it in first.
Great.
A Beetle. I mean, I have to say it. I just have. The Beetle's not a very big car. No. Were you always that height?
Yeah. So in high school. So I drove my senior year. I was already 6'5" by then.
6'5".
I wasn't this big though. I was 6'5", 180 pounds. I looked like a But surprisingly, the Beetle has room because the engine's in the back.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
It's in the back.
So there was enough leg room for me, and it was fine. It was like driving a go-kart.
Yeah. It's when you graduated from law school and you started practicing law, did you ever buy that dream car? that you wanted, or that one car where you're like, I've reached the top of the mountain with the type of car that you wanted?
No, I mean, in law school, I had an '87 Grand National that I drove in law school, and if you didn't find me in class, you'd find me under the car, working on the car. That was kind of it for me. I really loved those cars, and I was a fanatic with those cars. I think the only thing that I would have wanted more is maybe like a 1970 Chevelle SS or a 1969 Camaro Z28. Those are the two cars that. Yeah, if someday I can get one of those, that would be amazing.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. But the Buick, though, those are kind of known for being not much to look at. However, if you have the right person, make the modifications, put the what is it called, the cool air like intake, modify it, you could have a monster like on the road.
Oh, we had a monster. Yeah, so no, we had the intercooler upgrade, the air-to-air front mount intercooler. We had we tore the engines down. They had ported heads and the intake and the larger turbo, and we had them running 10 seconds in a quarter mile back then.
Wow! And did you ever like come up next to that guy that was driving the Porsche or the Corvette and you were just
plead the fifth. I plead the fifth on that.
But that's when I think back about the Buicks, that's my memories of that guy who pulls up next to a Porsche. The Porsche guy has no idea what that guy has under the hood, and the Buick smokes him just right out of the start.
Yeah, I love that car. It reminded me of Darth Vader. It's just black, and it had that plastic grill in front, and I love that car. Love the way it drove, someday I'll get another one. Maybe after I retire, I'll work on one.
Wow, what can you tell, lawyers or younger lawyers? What advice can you give them about the practice of law? Something
practice of law in general.
In general, or just being an attorney. What lesson can you
find? What you like. I mean, obviously you picked law, but there's a lot of different things you can do, and so. Yeah, I don't know how I ended up here. If you go back and look at my law school transcript, you're going to see classes in mortgages and oil and gas and all sorts of different things that have nothing to do with child protection or child welfare. And if you look at my resume, you'll see that I was at the DA's office, and I was with Child Protective Services, and then I did bankruptcy, I did family, I did all sorts of different things trying to figure out what my niche was. And for a while there was bankruptcy for a little bit, and it seems like I found my place, right? And it's important to kind of try different things out there and see what suits you. It's not necessarily what makes you the most money, because that's not necessarily going to bring you happiness, and it may not be what you really are suited for. That's one thing. The other thing I would tell attorneys is be yourself. One of the problems that I had when I started out as an attorney was everybody wanted to tell me how to do things their way. And it was a very unnatural feeling to go into court and actually increase the anxiety levels because I was trying to do it a certain way and it just didn't click for me. So find your own style, and find your strengths and utilize those in the courtroom and with your clients.
Well, Judge Villalon, thank you very much for joining us. This has been a fantastic chat, with you, and
thank you for having me.
And we hope to see other great stuff coming out of your court.
Oh, thank you. It's been a privilege to be here.